Hi, everybody. I'm Shawn Achor, and this is the first official conversation for my new podcast called The Force Behind the Work. I've spent more than 25 years traveling around the world, leading teams, building businesses, launching products, and working through change. And the one thing I've learned is that strategy is usually the easiest part. The hard part is what happens next. And that's really why I wanted to start this. The Force Behind the Work is meant to be a place for real conversations about leadership, change, execution, belief, and most importantly, the people behind the strategy. Not polished theories, definitely not perfect answers, but just honest thoughts from things I've lived through, things that both myself and all of you are seeing today, and challenges I think a lot of us are also working through right now. And belief and the power of belief feels like the right place to start. And when I say belief, I'm talking about more than just believing something good is going to happen. I'm talking about belief in yourself, belief in your goals, belief in your abilities, and belief that what you do still matters. And belief that even when you can't control everything happening around you, you may still have some ability to influence what happens next. Now, a few weeks ago, my wife, the boys, and I were on a family trip in LA. And we were driving back home through LA traffic. She put on an episode of the Oprah podcast with Shawn Achor. Oprah introduced Shawn as a positive psychology researcher who studies the connection between happiness and success. And he was there talking about a brand new book that he just came out with called The Power of Beliefs and how strengthening 7 core beliefs predicts greater success and a better life. And there was a part of that conversation that really stopped me. Shawn's point was that our beliefs don't only shape how we experience what's happening right now, but they also influence what happens next. How, for example, as students, how do we move through school? If we're searching for a new job or had a role eliminated, what does that look like? How do we navigate through something as serious as going through cancer treatment for ourselves or a loved one? And then he described belief in a way that it really stayed with me. He talked about belief as a lens in which we view the world, a lens that is unique to each of us and deeply human. And that was the moment. That was the one that really hit me because at that point in my life, my own belief lens was being tested a lot. My role had been eliminated a few months earlier, and I was still working through some really personal questions and things like, do my 25 years of experience, do they matter? Do I still have something meaningful to contribute? What am I capable of doing next? Or where do I go next? And maybe, most importantly, what am I choosing to believe about myself while I figure all this out? And that's where the idea of the lens became really real for me, because my situation itself hadn't changed, but I could see pretty clearly that there were 2 very different ways I could look at it. I could look at it through a fear lens of scarcity, anxiety, uncertainty, doubt, and my future felt super unstable and unclear. Or the other lens I could look at was one of belief. And in this belief lens, I could have clarity, I could have confidence, I could have possibility, I could have curiosity. And that future now seems a little bit more shapeable. And if you think about it, same situation, a different lens, and then also a different response. And potentially very different decisions about what I would do next and the actions I would take. And that's the part that I think really matters. Belief isn't pretending reality isn't real. It isn't blind optimism. It isn't saying, just think positive, everything will work out. The reality was still the reality. My role was gone. I was unemployed. There was uncertainty for myself. There were a ton of things I had no control over whatsoever, but I could control the lens that I brought into it. And for me, I kept coming back to a few things that I believed. I still had something to offer. My experience still had value. My actions that I took going forward still mattered. And my faith, my family, and my core group of friends were still part of the foundation underneath me. None of that guaranteed an outcome, but it did give me a better place from which to make the next decision. And that's really what I mean by the power of belief. It can influence whether we keep looking for an option, whether we pick up the phone and make the call, whether we ask for help, whether we try something new, like making a podcast, or whether we decide, maybe too early, that there isn't a path forward. And once I started thinking about that personally, I started seeing the same thing in leadership. Because people are being asked to absorb a huge amount of change right now. Things like AI, automation, restructuring, new systems, cost pressure, tariffs, et cetera, et cetera. And as leaders, we see those as business decisions for a company and a team. But the people experiencing those decisions may be asking much more personal questions. They might be asking, do I still matter here? Does my experience still have value? Can I learn what comes next? Is there a place for me? Can I trust the leaders above me to make good decisions? And that's why I kept coming back to this idea, is we may be managing a business transformation while someone else is experiencing a very personal transformation. And the lens through which they experience that change really matters. One person, for example, might see AI as something that can help them do better work. Another may see the same technology as a threat to everything they've spent years learning. Same change, very different response. And I don't think the answer is to tell people, just be positive. Sometimes the fear is real. Sometimes resistance is telling us something. And the role of a leader is not to deny that. It's to create enough clarity, trust, and confidence for people to understand where they fit and what they can still influence. And that brings us beyond leadership, because belief matters to all of us. And at some point, every one of us is going to face something we didn't choose. It might be a setback. It might be a career change, a difficult decision, a family challenge, a moment where we simply have no idea what comes next. We may not be able to control the situation, but we do have some influence over the lens that we bring into it. Do we see only the obstacle, or do we see the possibilities? Do we convince ourselves, nope, there's no options? Or do we take a step back and stay curious enough to look for the next one? Do we believe this moment defines us? Or do we believe we still have some ability to shape what comes next? Now, belief, it doesn't erase fear. That's going to be there. It doesn't erase uncertainty. It does not guarantee any good outcome. But what it can give us is a little more clarity, a little more confidence, and maybe enough agency to take the next step forward. And if you're a leader, this becomes even more powerful, because it's not only your own lens that matters, your words matter, your decisions matter, how you communicate these changes really matters. And whether the people around you believe they still have value, or they still have a voice, or have a place in what comes next matters. Technology will continue to evolve. Markets will continue to shift. Politics will continue to have news. Organizations will continue to make difficult choices. And belief does not give us control over every outcome. In the last few months have really reminded me of that. But belief does influence how we respond, what we notice, and the decisions we make when the path is not clear. So return to the lens through which we view the future. The strength of our belief shapes our lens. The lens we look through shapes our decisions. And our decisions, repeated over time, those will help shape the future we create. That's true for each of us personally, and that's true for the people we're responsible leading. So maybe the question is, what lens are you looking through right now? And if you're a leader of others, what lens are you helping your people look through? I'd really love to hear your perspective on belief and how it's shown up in your own life or leadership. And as the force behind the work gets rolling here, I'd love to hear your questions, challenges, topics you'd like to hear us talk through in future conversations. If you want to be on with me, reach out. Let's talk together. Leave a comment, join the conversation. I have a full Power of Belief article coming soon, where I'll go quite a bit deeper into this idea and where Shawn Achor dove into. But for now, that's my perspective, because behind every person and every leader and every idea and every result, there's a force behind the work. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.